Aloha. Welcome to The Nature of Your Nature. I'm Dr. Valerie Simonsen. Thank you for joining us today. And we have a very special guest, one of my most revered people on this island in Hawaiʻi. Kiʻi and I've known each other for a long time, but especially got close during the fires on the west side.
Yeah.
So Kiʻi, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. So mahalo, first and foremost, for having me. Really appreciate it. And the opportunity to share and just be with you. I love you so much. Again, my name is Kiʻinaniokalani Kahoʻohanohano, and I am first and foremost a mommy. I'm a mother of 5 beautiful home birth babies. My oldest is 22, 19, 13, 9, and 7. So that's first and foremost who I am.
Wow.
Beyond that, I am a cultural practitioner of lomi, la'au, lapa'au, ho'oponopono, and pali keiki, or hanau ea. Feel very honored to have that ike, that wisdom, in a time where I didn't realize how rare a lot of the wisdom that had been shared with me through my elders, through my kupuna, was. I thought I was one of many, and I mean, we do exist, but it's not as prevalent, this knowledge, due to assimilation and oppression of our practices and of our people for so many generations at this point. And really, one of, I think, the most important foundational things to even say is to even be able to be here, not just with this ike, but to be able to sit here, publicly speak to these things is a manui. It's a big thing. My kupuna did not have that luxury. Yeah, it was not fashionable to be Hawaiian, as my papa would say, you know, and yeah, so that in itself is a big thing, to be in a day and age and a time where we can speak more freely, still very protected, you know, in what is shared and how, but also, you know, when I teach classes, it's one of the first things we acknowledge is just to be able to sit in this circle and talk about these medicines, you know, our plant allies and such, you know, is such a blessing, to be able to now have that freedom and the ability to share then more with our future generations, so that these things can survive and thrive and live on. So much has been lost through our history, and I'm really grateful to be born in a time where, for lack of better words, you know, this time of renaissance and bringing back and standing, like I said, in a time where we can be authentically ourselves. Yeah.
And it brings me back to the language.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even the language, you know, we weren't able to speak or teach our language. You know, only in the last 30 plus years have we had access to Hawaiian immersion education. So in my lifetime, you know, even it wasn't something that was available to be able to go to Hawaiian immersion school or learn our language or even teach it. For, you know, when I was even a young child, that was the case, you know. So you know, we have chosen as a family Hawaiian immersion for our keiki, and with much sacrifice, coming from Kahakuloa village most of the years, bringing our keiki in from the village to the bus stop, and then having them bus up to Haleakala, another mauna of Maui, you know, whole other side of the island every day. And we'd given them the option, you know, there's a bus that goes from the village straight to English schools, and they wouldn't want to do it any other way. So I'm really grateful that we were able to plant those seeds in our keiki and, and have access to that education. I'm so grateful for all of those pillars, who were looked at as crazy and, this isn't possible. And how are you going to do this? And where there's a will, there's a way. Whereas that passion is there, and they're all akua driven and have really done a beautiful, amazing job through these past decades to revive our language. As well as what comes with that, traditions and connection to ʻāina. We're able to, when you disconnect a culture or a people from their language, you lose so much. And I don't think I need to explain that to you. But, one of the things that's most pertinent for me, and that is not just like losing identity, but even more so, all of our records, all of our documents, all of the nupepa, like all of the newspapers, everything was Makolala Hawaiʻi is all in Hawaiian language. So if you're disconnected from that, it's difficult to be able to identify where your lands were, where the boundaries are and such. And so that's just another way to, oki or sever the connection to ʻāina. And obviously, folks being displaced from ʻāina is very harmful in nature, especially when we're in our own homeland and don't have access to that ʻāina, that home. We have a very small population, largely a small population of Native Hawaiians that currently reside in Hawaii at this point still, due to many aspects of life. Sickness, many of our people were wiped out very fast with the disease that was brought to Hawaii through the past generations. And, then just tourism and all the different things that have come in, I could go on and on, right, about those things. But displacement, being displaced from home, and not being able to access home. More Hawaiians. We have a fewer percentage of Hawaiians in the state, but we have the highest amount of houselessness within that number. So our people are displaced, for generations, typically in our own homeland. And we continue to see that, definitely amplified through the fires, yes. Which, houselessness and lack of affordable housing was a really big issue prior to the fires and is currently one of the biggest issues that we still have. Yeah.
I'd like to pop back to school. And
okay.
That's an incredible commitment that you made to bring your keiki to the school. But when I first came to Maui, there was a mom that from the school brought her little guy to see me, and then pretty soon I started seeing quite a few of the Ohana, the families. And I remember this one time, it was a really challenging case, and so I made out my treatment sheet, and it was very detailed, and they were walking out the door, and they crumpled it up and threw it in the garbage. And I said, well, why did you come to see me?
Right.
And they said, we needed to know what it was. It was a thyroid disorder.
Oh, okay.
And then they went home, went into their pule, used their alai, right?
Alai, yeah.
And the child was fine. Now that was kindergarten. High school graduation, family calls me again and says, this is what's going on. What do you think? And I said, well, go back to what you did when they were little, right?
Right.
Fixed it just like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
It really was.
Nice.
And there was only, I don't even remember, you could count the kids there was just a few kids. And the last time I was over at is it Ho'omau?
Ho'omau? Yeah,
right?
Ho'omau.
Which is a fundraiser for
Hawaiian Immersion Program. It's our main fundraiser of the year. We do annually in March. Yeah.
How many keiki are there now? Right?
Well, I mean, initially, so there's Punana Leo o Maui. Punana Leo o Maui is the preschool. Yeah. Okay. So it's like the feeder into the program hopefully, of Kula Kaiapuni, which is a Hawaiian immersion school K through 12. So initially we started with our Wailuku school, Punanaleo o Maui in Wailuku. There was then for some years Punanaleo in Lahaina some years ago, for a time, and then for really just unfortunate reasons that school had to close. And Kahukili Namau, she's really held it down for all these years, really to just make sure that this program survives, and not just survives but thrives. Was her kumu, Auntie Hoku, who actually, instilled this kuleana essentially upon her. Wow. And she's been so gracious to accept it for such a long time. Yeah. And so we did just have the one school for the bulk of these years. And, you can only have 30 keiki within that preschool. And that doesn't mean that they accept 30 new keiki every year even. So, it's very competitive oftentimes at this point to get in to the preschool, which is a beautiful foundation of growing ohana and connection, pilina, within the community and our families, and just such a gift to be a part of those programs. And so Ho'omau supports Punanaleo o Maui as the number one fundraiser. The vision ultimately also is to build a bigger school so that they could hold more keiki. And at this point, we haven't been able to expand in that way, but we have expanded in the fact that we do have Lahaina. Punanaleo is alive in Lahaina again, and also in Hana. So that's really special. I think of all places, Lahaina and Hana really need to have that. But it's a limited capacity. If there was 12 graduates and they only have so many pukas every year, they can only fill what is open. So that's still somewhat limiting, but it's growing, nonetheless, it's growing. And so when you graduate from the Punanaleo o Maui preschools, you would then hopefully go into Kula Kaiapuni o Maui, which is our Hawaiian immersion public schools, basically. So they're public schools, they're not charter schools. And so we have Paia, which has been the elementary school here in Maui for quite some time, that's been hosting the program, as well as then Kalama, that has the program, and then Kinke Kaulike. At this point, when Hana, they have started the Kaiapuni program as well, and they're building each year as the keiki graduate to the next level. The program grows there, so that's really exciting. Same thing in Lahaina. So Lahaina Intermediate has been able to expand to have Hawaiian immersion programs in past years, as well as Lahaina Luna, very dear friend of mine, has dedicated herself to bringing that to Lahaina. And so we're really grateful for all the folks that, it's really, they're not just kumu, they're not just kumu. The work never ends. It's day and night and day, and it doesn't stop. And we have to fight. Like half the time, we don't have buses. We don't have, they want to do a wait list, for capacity reasons. And it's pretty amazing in the years that I've been a part of the program to see how far they've come. We used to have only a handful of graduates for many, many years, as the program was starting and growing. And now we have, graduations with over 20 keiki. And I think this year is up to in the 30s of what's, or maybe it was last year. I don't know exactly the numbers because I don't have keiki in the senior classes right now. But I know the numbers have grown immensely and continue to grow. One of the issues with that is that, we also need the resources, not just the support from the DOE and such, but we also need resources as far as kumu and teachers that are actually able to come back and teach our keiki. But I do see a really large amount of our Kaiapuni, the haumana, the graduates, the students, do come back. and they're very dedicated. You know, it's not just school, it's not just language, it's a way of life, I would say. And you know, many really take that to heart and wrap their whole lives around it, you know. And that's
what it takes, though.
It is. It absolutely is.
When I was in New Zealand, I ended up Puerto Maori, and they put me in the public school first to work with the children. They were having a lot of trouble with behavioral things, and they were working on nutrition, but we you know, did a little bit more with that. And then they took me over to their school, where when you stepped on the campus, you couldn't speak any English, right? Well, it was amazing to see these little ones just so strong.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And then when the public school and the other school got together and played football, they call it, right? Man, those
rugby.
The poor little public kids, they just got stomped because they didn't have that energy, that mana, right? That comes with speaking the language.
Well, and just having identity, like that connection to identity and being in that, like empowered in that way. And that's a really amazing point also, because, you know, you look at, I mean, you know, we've had so many, I just want to cry thinking about it. We've had so many amazing, you know, leaders in our community through the generations, but you look at the keiki, especially the keiki o Hawaiian, that come in with this whole other level of mana and foundations that are so strong. They're forces to be reckoned with, you know, and I'm so grateful again to be alive in this time where I can see you know, how far we have come and have so much hope in what I see for the future generations.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back to a little bit of your tradition of midwifery. Right? What you don't call it that.
I mean, not officially, but, you know, in basically all cultures, you know, there are multiple words for what you might refer to as the practice of midwifery or birthing practices. And it all translates back to the same word, midwife. Yeah.
And with that, though, what you have done over these last 14 years is you've kept that alive in the state of Hawaii,
yeah.
I mean, with others helping.
I was gonna say definitely, and it was no small venture, you know, and it's definitely it's definitely not something that I could have done on my own, but about 14 years ago, Senator Josh Green at the time, who's now our governor, who's also a doctor, introduced the first legislation in my generation, in my era. This is just history repeating itself, of course, but and that's a whole nother radio show or whatever, you know. That's what I'm just saying. There's a timeline of, you know, the oppression of our kahuna and our, you know, our cultural practices, for sure, and how they had tried to historically assimilate and legitimize and, you know, make our kupuna who didn't speak Latin take tests in Latin in order to pass an exam to be accredited or acknowledged or, you know, deemed officially a practitioner, I guess. And so anyhow, in today's, you know, modern world, we have many types of midwives. And essentially, the foundations of midwifery, you know, no matter where you come from, this is one of the oldest practices.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, you know, one of my uncles, he said, this is the first profession, you know. And we, of course, didn't necessarily see it as a profession. We saw it as a kuleana. It's like our something that we awama, we have to hold it. We have to take care of it. We have that responsibility to care for our people. So it's just a part of life, in these ways. But things have changed, so much through the years. And I think it's really important that we get back to those roots.
Well, you've been one to bring us back to those roots. Thank you, along with all of the other people that were through this for the last 14 years. And you just made a major win, if I could say.
Yeah,
do you share about that, or do you feel comfortable sharing that?
I do. I'm still kind of navigating. It's all pretty new and fresh for me as well. And I actually want to, first and foremost, I don't even need to name every single one of them, but I just want to acknowledge my kumu. Yeah, my sources, those that helped create me to be who I am and give me the gifts that I have to share. And, I didn't choose this path. It chose me. I had no idea and no intention ever. In fact, I would have told you that I'm probably the last person that would ever catch a baby. I remember being in health class, like in 7th grade. And they separated the kane and the wahine, and we had to watch the wahine. We had to watch a film of birth, someone giving birth, and I got so sick. I did. I literally got I'm very empathic and feeling, and I didn't understand all of that when I was in 7th grade either. But I remember going straight to the bathroom, and I didn't quite palu, but I felt real sick, and very emotional, and also like scared poopless, kind of like, whoa, I gotta do that if I want to have a baby. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so anyways, I really, really would have never thought, but what happened really was that in the process of just caring for folks through lomi, lapa'au, aipono, nutrition and all of that, I was called in to be a part of folks' births. And so some at home, some in the hospital. And as I started to enter into those spaces, I realized I was coming in with many tools, but I really needed to know more. I wanted to know more. Yeah. And, you can want to know more, but you have to be invited to know more. You have to be invited to the births, which I was already being invited to. And so that was my Kiʻi, but I felt like I needed more foundations, and I kept going, from one kupuna to the next. And maybe they had taught me medicine or lomi or prayers or whatever it was, or just had strong relationships with. And it was mostly in caring for them, honestly, that I attained any of this information and training. Very naturally, not like classes, how we do workshops and things like that nowadays. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's more of like a passing down in an organic, fashion, through conversations and experiences and feeling and doing. Yeah. So, as I, came into the spaces, I needed to know more, and I feel like I was very blessed to have then, traditional midwives that had been serving Maui for many, many years. Take me under their wing and support me in my own births as I became a mom. And of course, that was my greatest teachers, and also why I acknowledge my keiki first. But none of that would be possible, if it wasn't for the willingness. And I didn't even really see fully what was occurring in the moment. I was just open to learning and opening to receiving. And again, more so there to malama them. And there was this reciprocity that occurred, and it was very natural. So I feel really blessed with that. Auntie Tina Garzero and Auntie Kadi Mourningstar were both of, very, very strong pillars for me. Yeah. Katie is still. Tina's passed on. And I helped walk her home too, and some of the last things that she said to me, it was right in the time when legislation was being introduced, and we started gathering community and having conversations about, what the community saw as like what is needed. Like, do people want licensure? Do people not want licensure? Do they want optional licensure? How can we bring together what the community needs in a pono way? without also being restrictive or being oppressive, as we've seen globally.
Yes.
For generations again. Because this is not a Hawaii issue alone, but Hawaii in this time is setting precedents. And so that's why it also became such a big thing to stand in these spaces and be this voice for those who are no longer with us, for those who were scared to speak and felt like they had to hide. I was still a young midwife, you know, and I was really coming forward to protect my elders. That was initially what my space was there. And as they passed and as they encouraged me to holomua, to move forward and to claim my role and not to question it. Some of Tina's last words to me was, "You're right, baby." She grabbed my hand. She could barely move her hand, but she grabbed my hand. I was giving her a lomi, and she said, "I just want you to know that you're right." We'd gone back and forth for years. Should I get licensed with her? Because I could have apprenticed and got licensed and applied for the NARM and the whole thing, working with her. And it just really was like ethically, like, I don't mind learning the skills, but it wasn't like sitting in my na'au, like, this is where I'm going. Or what I realized and what she helped me realize is being a keiki or a midwife in Maui for 40 years before her passing, you know, she acknowledged and shared with me, you know, how rare the knowledge and the practice that I came in with was in all her years. And I mean, partially that's because, you know, not everybody's out there like sharing it. And I wasn't out there sharing it with her, but the way our relationship developed is a lot of people were coming to me for support, and I could call upon her and she would support me to support them. And so it was a really beautiful relationship of being able to be authentic to myself in my own practice and her really honoring that, and vice versa. It was a really, really beautiful opportunity to work with her for the years that I did. And she gave me those foundations as well as educating Mourningstar, still does, you know. We did births together for many years also. And I've learned so much from them. It's in the work, it's in the doing, you know. And so to be so honored to be invited into those spaces and to be mentored by those who have come before me and been in practice for so many years just really helped enhance not just my skill set, but my confidence. And the last words that Tina said, you know, was, "You're right, baby. Sovereignty is the way."
Whoa.
Yeah, sovereignty is the way. Yeah, that was one of the last things she said to me in person. And that continues to give me strength to do what I do throughout all these years. I still hear her say that all the time, you know. She said, you know, the gifts that have been bestowed upon you are yours. And although we went back and forth all these years and, you know, all the things, she said, I'm so glad that you stayed true to what your na'au was telling you. Because, you know, there's I mean, we have to compromise, obviously, on some level. I'm not a good compromiser. I mean, I am, like, you know what I mean. I'm steadfast in protecting what is dear. Yeah. And so, you know, her highlighting how precious and how rare these gifts were, you know, in her lifetime serving Maui and beyond. Lose sight of like those foundations and to really just really focus and encourage myself and others to recognize that it's okay to be who we are. It's okay to learn, you know, other folks' traditions and ways of practice, but it's most important to remember who we are and go back to our foundations and make sure that, you know, even if it's just little by little, to be able to shift the narrative of what birth looks like, what protocol looks like, what tradition looks like, and how birth is not a sickness. Yeah. It's a heightened state of wellness, especially if you treat it that way. Yeah. And so one of the things that's so different as a cultural practitioner, is that we focus on preventative care, and we're proactive and we participate in our wellness, in all the ways. So, sometimes the recommendation is you got to go get in the ocean. You know what I mean? For us, that's medicine. That's very, very crucial. And sometimes it's a change of diet. Sorry, a little bit too close. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Sometimes it's changing your diet. Especially with our Hawaii, we look at the time, that va, as a time of kapu. Yeah, so there's appropriate behavior, there's appropriate foods, or more appropriate foods, or la'au, herbs and such during that time. There's also things that would be kapu, where you don't eat a certain thing, or you don't go into certain spaces, or you don't do a certain activity, because you are in a vulnerable space. It's not sickness, it's not
it's sacred.
It's sacred, exactly. And so we treat it as such. Yeah. And we honor, these things through these practices. And so one major difference, actually, in our perspective, for the most part, we talk about the practitioner, the midwives, the doctors, the doula, the nurses, and we rely so heavily on them. And that's great that we have the opportunity to have all of these beautiful resources, and we need all of us. Yeah. But yeah, there's a midwife for everyone, and what a midwife is so different, depending on what kind of midwife you're talking about. And so we need that choice. And more than that, in our perspective, we are the practitioner. Yeah, mommy is the practitioner. We are the vessel. Yeah, right. Our biggest kuleana as wahine is very simple. Yes. To procreate, bring forth future generations. Ho'ului kalahui, to grow our lahui, to grow our future generations and see our people thrive. And that's one of the foundational differences in perspective is, we're here to empower the wahine, and not just the wahine, but also bringing back the kane and all the other aspects of multi-generational homes and other elders, or, aunties, uncles, hoa, friends, whatnot, that can be a part of that supportive circle, whether they're actually literally a part of the labor or the birth itself. Is not so much the issue, but everybody has their role, and when we all take on that kuleana and we have that role, everything flows differently. And if you're a Hawaii person, someone who is carrying with child, you're going to feel supported when you have all these pillars, and all your bases covered so effortlessly. So, we reclaim that kuleana. We try to help encourage the kane to reclaim that kuleana. And it's a really essential part for me, for our kane to be involved. And I mean, of course, we have mommies that are single moms. We don't even know where the dad is. That's sometimes the most important times for us to show up in sisterhood and create that circle of support. But, many times one of the most beautiful things about the work that we do, I think, is seeing the ohana grow in this way, and seeing the kane, the husbands or partners, grow in a way where they are no longer helpless or hopeless or feel inferior in a birthing space. By the time we are with you throughout the pregnancy and prepare you and spend hours and hours, a prenatal appointment for us, isn't 10 minutes and more time in the waiting room. and this like you're a number, boom, 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 and God bless all the folks that do all that care, because that's also so crucial and important. We love you. However, you know, there's something really to be said about being able to spend 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes with a couple each time. And have different mana'o. Like I have sometimes the aunties there, or the younger ones, or, you know, whoever. But I feel like everybody that shows up in those spaces is supposed to be there for whatever reason to offer mana'o every time, right? And it's just really different to be able to build that pilina, that connection, that trust. When people go in strong, we see beautiful outcomes like most of the time. I mean, every now and then there's just like weird stuff that can occur. It's bigger than us, right? And we don't know what that. We don't know always.
Environmental issues or all kinds of different things, right?
I know we could go down so many tangents, but
we won't.
But we won't. But yeah, it's so important. And so that's a big part, I think, of the difference in our perspective is supporting. It's not about me and what I say goes, right? You know what I mean? Or what I think needs to happen next. I mean, sometimes it is. Obviously, that's what I'm there. I'm there to guide and protect and cover that process, you know. But at the same time, it's about empowering them to know what they need to know and stepping into that kuleana. And that's another part, too, that's very important is kuleana and being accountable. You know, if we're working with folks, they have to be accountable. They have to show up. Right. They got to do the work. Yeah. And what you put in, you're going to get out, right? Most of the time. So in over 20 years of working at home, you know, and supporting home births, I work in the hospital as well. You know, when I'm called in to support hospital, I would prefer to stay at home, more so because of the trauma that I experience in the hospital a lot of times. But you can also have a beautiful birth in the hospital, you know. And so that's also really important to acknowledge, I think, you know, but you bring the same practices and you can see your doctor the whole time. I encourage dual care personally. You know, too. I do. I want them to have connections. I want them to, you know who they are in case we need to transfer or any, you know, or utilize their insurance so that they can do the things that me as a natural, you know, traditional birth practitioner who, you know, defers to lapa'au and things like this when need to, I want them to have, you know, the opportunity to utilize their insurance to do their blood work or to do their GBS testing or, you know, whatever the things are. And I think that one of the things that still needs to occur so much is the bridging of those gaps between who we are as practitioners and our medical practitioners and the spaces that they're in. I personally have had really good relationships. Not every midwife has had that experience in hospitals. It's not easy, but I spent years building those relationships with most of them, you know, building trust with them. And then at one point I was like the lomi practitioner that all the LND nurses would come to see, you know, and labor and delivery. Yeah. So even more so, you know, pilina, building relationships and connections. And then all of a sudden really shifted, you know, the experience of when I was in the hospital assisting intentionally or whether it was a transfer. Very seldom do we have to transfer. I think that's really important to say, like, you know, our cesarean rates are like less than 5%. You just walk into the hospital and you have a much higher chance of those kinds of things occurring, unfortunately. And, you know, it's not about hospital or home, but the point is that we should have choice. Yeah, you have the choice to go to the hospital. You have the choice to do, you know, all of these things in that arena. And there's those of us that don't feel safe in those environments. And so safety, you know, a lot of like even this legislation that was implemented, you know, is based on this foundation of, well, we need more safety. But what is safety? It's a really big question. Because for me, going into a cold, sterile room with someone I'm not familiar with, who doesn't seem compassionate to, oftentimes doesn't seem, or it's not that they're not compassionate even, they don't have time. Right? So that's not even, they can be the most beautiful people.
Insurance dictates so much,
much liability. I mean, it's just crazy. And so our perspective is so different oftentimes also, I think, because we don't have that, you know, although we are incredibly accountable.
Of course.
But we don't have that same pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So I see value in licensure. I do. I just think that, again, just like choice in how you want to hanau, how you want to birth, you should have the choice of the practitioner. Because for me, for instance, I did have dual care throughout my pregnancies, for the most part. But I didn't feel seen. I felt traumatized oftentimes through my experiences. But I did want to use my insurance to do my due diligence and do my labs and get the information to make sure that I was safe to stay home.
Right.
We're not just like flying by the seat of our pants. Like, we know what we're doing. We're not like stay home, go broke, whatever. We stay home when we have a low risk situation and we know that, and we're going into it knowing that. And so we do the work, whether it's through, other care providers in dual care, or whether that we maintain that care ourselves, or, however we attain that. We do, rule out whether you're anemic and might bleed. We do rule out all of these different things and make sure that we have low risk moms and families going in. Although what low risk means to me is also different than others, so that's another area of gray. I love twins. I love breech. It's a lost art,
Oh, definitely.
And so nowadays, if you have a cesarean, you have to have multiple cesareans. There's no vaginal birth after cesarean offered here in Maui. Anyways, you have to fly to Oahu, and there's so many limitations in evacuation birth. That's what that is. Living in Lanai, living on Molokai, living in Maui, living in, really any of our islands. If you need any more elevated levels of care, you have to go to Oahu. Or, depending on where you are, you have to go for just basic care, even for a prenatal. My neighbors in Kahakulua, multiple keiki, they have to fly to Oahu just for a prenatal. Yeah, it's really bad. We are definitely living in a maternal healthcare crisis, and we have, very limited access to care. One of the things on that note that's really special, I think, that I want to say is that we are just being funded, Pacific Birth Collective. I'm a director of one of many of Pacific Birth Collective, which is a nonprofit organization here in Maui as well. And we just were blessed with a relationship with the Department of Health. And funding to support rural access outreach programs offering prenatal care, postpartum care, and education. And their focus is actually through a cultural lens and to prioritize that. So we go to East Maui once a month, and we go to Molokai at this point once a month to offer. And of course, we're kind of overachievers, so we don't just offer the care. We've been bringing lomi practitioners. Next month, I'm pretty sure we'll have lomi practitioners and acupuncture offered in both spaces. And we bring food. Of course. We bring supplies. Yeah. Because everybody right now is having a hard time. You know, I don't care who you are. Food, the price of everything, has skyrocketed through the years. And access to food and nourishment, especially during pregnancy and postpartum and nursing, for nursing moms is so vital. So that's been a really exciting program to be a part of. We just finished our first quarter of services, and it just keeps growing every time.
I'm sure.
And the communities are so inspired. And I feel like what's also really neat about this program is I have my young ones, and they come with me. Our LPO, these young folks. Some, one who just very recently even graduated, and she's with us. A couple others that are young moms, from Lahaina and such. And I mean, many others, honestly. But it's exciting, because this is now an opportunity for us to help mentor them again and support them in their very organic, by doing learning. They learn by listening. They learn by observing. They learn by doing. And that's the way that we learn traditionally more so. So it's really wonderful. And it's also been really disheartening because of the laws and because of the question and the fear that we've been, having to walk through in these past few years when we did have such a really bad law pass in 2019. We haven't had that same level of freedom. And so, you mentioned our big win. And,
your big win. Here it is.
And it's like hard to get excited.
Is it?
It is. It's hard to get excited. I mean, I'm super excited. I feel really grateful.
Yeah.
We were able to achieve like great things and really honestly affected the future generations immensely by creating these productions through our fight. We fought for years, and I say fight, I wish it wasn't such a fight, but it actually was a huge fight to be able to, from the time that Josh Green introduced that legislation with Roz Baker, to educate and inform them. Like, what is a midwife? They had such a limited perception of like what it is and who we are and how there are many pathways and there are many traditions around birthing practices, and people will continue to choose tradition whether or not they create laws or regulations and restrictions. It will occur. And so after many years of legislation, we did have a law pass, and then we were put on a task force that came with the law. And the goal of the task force was essentially in a 3-year period. When the law first passed, we had something called a birth attendant exemption. And under that exemption, we had to follow certain criteria, sign an informed consent paper, big deal. I mean, if you're going to sign a birth certificate, to me, that's not a big deal. For some, it would be, I will say also, and I get that. But at least we had an option moving forward for all practitioners to be incorporated. And that was the goal of the task force, was by the end of the 3 years, not to go get licensed or figure out a pathway, which was often misinterpreted to be. Okay. But it was actually to take that 3 years and all of this mana'o and all of the information with all the stakeholders that were a part of this task force, which I sat on as well as the cultural practitioner, and figure out a way to incorporate all practices and all people. And that did not happen. What did happen is we did have a law that passed, with what was stated as an exemption for Native Hawaiian practice, as well as the birth attendant exemption. And although I do believe in my heart that it was truly an attempt, I have to clarify that, actually. Every year that they went to the ledge with a bill that didn't include the exemption for Native Hawaiian practice, I would call NHLC, Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, and let them know about the bill. And it would be deferred usually within 24, 48 hours because they came in at a certain point and said, okay, we're going to have to figure this out. So they did what they could to figure that out and, put into effect an exemption. But it wasn't functional, and I do appreciate all of the hard work of so many that poured into that exemption and trying to make it a reality, but it wasn't truly functioning. And there's so much about that. I won't go into like the details, but it didn't function. And so ultimately, everybody kept telling us we had an exemption. You guys are covered. And we're like, no, we're not. It's all a bunch of words. And so basically what ultimately happened is after so many years of trying to create change in the ledge, we ultimately were approached when we were shut down at the Capitol. Again, we were then approached by attorneys that offer the Center of Reproductive Rights, which is a global organization, national organization, actually approached us and asked if we would like to file a lawsuit. They asked me if I wanted to be the chief plaintiff, and by default, I agreed. Not something I would ever have wanted to do, but it was necessary.
And because of time,
yes,
let's get what happened?
Yeah,
just
that's
this
where I'm
last
going.
week.
Yeah,
we have a couple minutes
so we went to
left.
the injunction. We were able to win a partial injunction for cultural practice, and we were set for trial in January. And luckily, because of the lawsuit, the legislature did not make the improvements within the law during the past legislative session. We had to fight extremely hard. And Senator San Buenaventura and Senator Jarrett Keohokolole were pivotal, very much our champions in that last session as it passed through the Senate to make sure that we at least removed the criminal charges so that we cannot be sent to prison for practice. And there were many other things that needed to occur for the law to be pono, and the legislature actually came together with our attorneys, and we were able to come to a settlement recently. And so they gave us the PEP process, which is a pathway that makes it much more attainable for us in Hawaii. In the law, it required a pathway that does not exist within our state to attain licensure. Minor detail, that's really, really cutting out our local community and being a part of that workforce. And so it is a big win. It's a great win. We have the best cultural protections that we can have, thank goodness, for NHLC and Kersha Durant and many others within that organization, CRR, and all of our attorneys. And so that was my goal, first and foremost, and also to create that pathway, because even Native Hawaiians and non-Native Hawaiians are unable to attain licensure because of the way the law was set up. This law is still not perfect. There's still lots of work to do. We still have to be a part of making the rules and regulations within the midwifery practice. So, whether or not we can have twins at home or give birth, after 40 weeks at home, or, whatever your stipulations are is hard. But so there's still a lot of work to be done, but we've definitely reached a milestone.
Congratulations.
I'm really grateful that we finally made some progress.
Congratulations. So I'm going to close this up.
Okay.
But I want to go back to the fact that you were given something when you were born. Every one of you out there that are listening today, there's something that you have inside. And do you have anything to say about that? Like, hey, remember who you are. What would you say?
Absolutely. I think that's just that, actually, is so much of this is remembering who we are. Yeah, stepping into our power and stepping into our knowing and our reclamation, stepping back into that self-determination and that ea that is ours. And that's, through so many different aspects of cultural practice, for me, as one of the ways that I've been able to access that. And I really encourage, especially our youth, and not just our youth, Right.
But we really,
especially
we're here for you guys. We're here for you.
Yeah, so important, know your roots. Yeah. Don't question, who you are. There has been many, many years of oppression. I'm trying to come up with like a nice word. I don't really have one. But just so much. Okay, this is nice, sort of. My papa would say, we become someone else's children. Oh. Yeah, through the years we become someone else's children. So don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, remember who you are, the children of Hawaii. Reclaim that, know that. And be who you are authentically.
And everybody in the whole world. Yeah. The whole thing about decolonizing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was just saw my first grade report card. They were S's, no S pluses, which meant satisfactory, where other kids got E's because of XYZ. But that set up that whole thing for me my whole life, that I wasn't quite good enough, right?
Yeah.
Right, so we get to decolonize by remembering our roots. And our roots,
absolutely,
the way that we find our roots, get back to earth.
Yeah.
Or get back on the ʻāina. Get back on the land.
Absolutely. Yeah, get back to your cultural practices. Get back to ʻāina. Know your roots and malama them. Yeah, malama each other. Get back to the essence of aloha. I think that's one of the things, that is so crucial.
Wow.
So crucial.
And just to close it up to you, what is aloha? We get
oh my gosh,
2 minutes.
What a question. I could answer that in honestly so many ways, but I think just a mutual love and respect, knowing that we are a part of all things and we're so interconnected, and that everything sends out a vibration. And so when we're able to, you know, come back to the aloha, that is so crucial for our own grounding, for our own healing, but also how we share that, you know. There's an essence of our people, and how, you know, like our kupuna, you don't see that aloha the same as often nowadays, you know. It lived in our people. And that's really something that myself, I know, and so many others are really passionate about, sharing that aloha. And it's not something to be translated as much as it is a feeling.
Right.
Yeah, and that vibrational aspect of aloha. Yeah.
And I'll bring in another thing on that is there's a lot of common sense stuff here.
Super common sense.
Right, just common sense. And I am convinced you cannot teach common sense.
True that.
Right? But fortunately, we all have the opportunity to go out into nature, sit by a stream, put a rock in your pocket. You know, in Hawaii, do not take the rock off the island, right?
Don't take the shells either.
Yeah, don't. Okay.
Or the coral.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because they are ancestors. Yes, that's the people.
And they belong here.
And they belong here. Thank you. Yeah. So wherever it is that you are, remember to breathe. Yeah. And then just come home to what we're going to call the nature of your nature, and then buck up, put your big girl panties on, you know, or big boy panties, and then go for it. And that's what you have done, Kiʻi.
Yeah.
That's what you've done, and thank you to all that came before you. But I just want you to know how much I revere you. You inspire me every day, and thank you for being you.
Mahalo.
Yeah. So to all the rest of you, the nature of your nature, come home to you no more. Mahalo.
Mahalo
Kiʻi.
nui. Ahuiho.
The Maui Humane Society is sound